If you have any questions, raise your hand and the speaker will address you directly.
Two ways to ask. One is right, if you like, if you're shy, or if you want to speak directly on the word. Few questions have already come. Let me start with the first one first. I myself don't practice the religion of Islam, but I do respect the Sunnah, and I'm going to become an ambassador of Islam, I could at least follow the Sunnah of the Prophet and not the West. Sunnah means the walk, the talk, and the actions, the way he moved, the way he used to do the actions, and Sunnah beard and clothes. The question is, this attire represents the followers of the Prophet. This is where my question, this is the core of what I've been saying. It cuts right through the problem. Please forgive me, I don't want to identify the person, and don't identify yourself. If you believe this is the Sunnah, then that is the problem. Rasul's action, his speech, his approvals are all part of the Sunnah. But there are different types of Sunnah that we need to understand. One is called prescriptive Sunnah, and the other is called descriptive Sunnah. Prescriptive Sunnah are those we should follow, because he asked us to follow them. Descriptive Sunnah are those descriptions of the Prophet neither said follow, nor did he say don't follow. It's left upon individuals, and it's left upon the context and the climate and the country in which they live. An example. A brother became Muslim, Chinese guy, and he asked the Imam in Saudi Arabia, he was in Saudi Arabia working as an engineer, and he asked the Imam, what clothes should I wear? The Imam said, the long abaya that the Saudi dresses. So he went and bought a few of them, and he would go to the masjid, mosque on a regular basis, wearing the long abaya. His contract came to an end, and he went back to China. So he took a few long robes with him, and he took a few to give presents to his friends. When he was going to the mosque to pray, he would wear his long robe. His families, who were non-Muslims, would moan and groan and complain, and even cause a tantrum when they saw him wearing white long robes. In China, white dress is dress for funeral. So they asked him, why are you wearing dress for funeral every time you're going to go to pray? At least 5 times a day. So the guy was having a lot of difficulty with his family. Eventually, he wrote back to the same scholar and said to the scholar, what shall I do? The same scholar said to him, and what's China's national color? He wrote back, it's red. He said, okay, wear something red. Very simple answer. The Sunnah of the Prophet, in fact, it is the Quranic verse of the Quran where the Quran says, when you come to pray, put your best of the attire, best of clothing. Best of clothing in the Quran isn't described, isn't given a style or a fashion. For a Muslim man and woman, what God says and Prophet himself has exemplified is that we should not wear clothes that represent arrogance, clothes that represent pride and haughtiness. No transparent clothes should be worn. Clothes that accentuate our sexuality should not be worn. Those are the principles for men and women. For men, specifically, clothes that contain 100% silk, naturally not allowed, and they're not allowed to wear gold. For men, that is. For women, they're allowed to wear all of those and follow all the same principles, except they also have to cover their hair. Not their face and their hand, but their hair. Those are the principles of Sharia, Islam, when it comes to clothing. It doesn't say we have to wear the long galabiya or jalabiya Prophet wore. It never said that. It's not even expected that you would. If somebody thinks they should, they have not understood the Sunnah at all. Sunnah is to follow the examples of the Prophet in his mannerism, in his character, in his behavior, in the way he did things with people. Those are called prescriptive Sunnah. Not the descriptive one. The Prophet used to love pumpkin. I have an uncle who loves pumpkin. Every time I go to his house, he's serving pumpkin. We're all sick and tired of having pumpkin. So we told our husband, please stop serving pumpkin. But Prophet loved pumpkin, he used to say it to us all the time. Well, Prophet loved it, you love it, you have it, but don't serve it to the rest of your family. There's a difference between loving the Prophet. Abdullah ibn Umar, the son of Umar ibn Khattab, and Umar ibn Khattab, two people from the same family, both of them were companions of the Prophet, had completely opposing view on these issues. Abdullah ibn Umar used to follow the footsteps of Prophet. He used to put his foot on the same foot mark of the Prophet and walk in the same way. There was a tree where Prophet ducked one day, and Abdullah ibn Umar would duck under the same tree every time he would walk, instead of going by it. When Umar ibn Khattab saw this, he came and chopped off the tree. His son became furious. Dad, why did you do that? I can imagine a conversation. Umar ibn Khattab said, yes, Ya Abdullah, my son, you may be wise enough and loving enough to the Prophet that you follow his footsteps and even duck like the Prophet. But there will come a time when people will begin to worship the tree itself. So I'm going to chop it. Those of us who understand that there is something called Western clothes, there is something called Eastern clothes, there is something called Islamic clothes, there is something called non-Islamic clothes, have misunderstood the concept of the Sunnah. Principle is very clear, I've made them very clear. There is no fashion ascribed to clothes of East or the West. It's completely contextual. If you come from Malaysia, you may be wearing a skirt like a woman. And the Bangladeshis do, and the Indians do. If you come from Afghanistan, your pajama or the trousers may be so big that 4 people will fit inside. There's nothing wrong with that. If you come from Britain, you may be wearing suit and shirt and a jacket. Absolutely nothing wrong, as long as you don't violate any of the principles that I laid out earlier on. And wherever you are, your clothes is the clothes of the Sunnah. Your clothes is the clothes of the Sunnah. So please don't misunderstand them. And that is precisely the surgery we need, revision we need. We have reduced the life of the Prophet to attires, to the beard, and few external features, rather than his internal life. That's the answer to that question in a long-winded way. Second question, what and where do you classify a Muslim world under what classification? Well, it was just a geographical. And you're absolutely right. At this moment in time, it's very difficult to make that classification. And I want to also say to you, for the 21st century, we need a reclassification of how the world was divided. When the Crusaders went around the Muslim world, decimating the Muslims in the area of Jerusalem, Palestine, and Syria, and Damascus, and that particular part of the world, even in Turkey, when they were destroying, so not Turkey that was Christian at that time, Muslims came out of that particular scenario with a reaction. The reaction was, the world is divided into 3 categories. Dar al-Islam, place of Islam, Dar al-Harb, place of war, and Dar al-Aqd, place of contract, peace treaty. 3 categories. It was a political response rather than a Sharia response. They needed a response. When the Crusaders went, came Genghis Khan and his army. They did the same classification. We live in the 21st century where mobility is so normal. Travel has become so fast. The world has become a global village. 25 million Muslims live today in Europe. 25 million Muslims in Europe alone. If Turkey becomes part of Europe, and hopefully it will become a member of EU soon, it will suddenly change European socioeconomic as well as demography. Turkey will bring 90 million Muslim population to Europe. Suddenly, it will become 1/5 of European population. In other words, 20% of Europe will be Muslim. For anybody to say Europe is not Muslim, they're also not in tune with the modern time and the realities of the world. So the question is absolutely right. There is no way of classifying. The world at large, any place could be Muslim, and any place could be non-Muslim. Under the current climate and the condition in which we live, all places have Muslims, and if they were to live and practice their faith, they would find themselves in a good and Islamic environment in that way. Third question. You speak about how people in Egypt are quiet about their situation. I live in Egypt and there is a military base at the end of my street. The country has been following emergency rule for the last 5 years. how would you suggest something like this could be changed?